Hi, it's Chari here, and today I'm going to be making this sympathy card with more of a masculine feel. Sympathy cards are not the easiest cards to make, and I find they're even harder when I'm making it for a guy. But I know that this particular person likes to hike and loves the outdoors, so I thought maybe the little bear and the squirrel from the Love You S'more set would be perfect. And the sending hugs sentiment, I think, is much more comforting than a with sympathy kind of sentiment for the front. So I'm just going to be stamping these out in some black licorice Lawn Fawn ink because I'm going to be doing some colored pencil coloring on this project. And I actually tried these with a brown and a gray, but once I got my color on there, the lines kind of disappeared, so I decided to go back and do it again with black. Now I'm going to fast forward here so you can see all my coloring, but in super speed, so this video isn't super long. I'm going in with some French gray Prismacolor colored pencils here. I've used 3 different shades, and then I'm going to do the darkest on the bottom. And I'm just putting a light layer of each color down. Then I can go back in and build up. I'm going to be blending these colors with Gamsol on this particular project so that I get a nice kind of smooth look to them. And you can see that sometimes that Gamsol changes the color of the pencil a little bit, makes it darker. You'll especially see it when I do the bear here. But it's just breaking down the wax of the pencil and spreading the pigment around a little more. So for the bear, I'm just going to use a more peachy color on his muzzle, and then I'm going to color him brown. These are kind of a reddish brown, and you can see all my pencil marks here, but those are going to smooth out when we blend it with the Gamsol. He's actually going to turn a little more red too when you do that. So I'm just going to go in with a darker one here and put kind of where I want the shadows to be. I'm not making them too dark just yet. You'll see I'll go back in after I do my blending and add a little more shadow because it's going to kind of blend out a little. I just want a nice layer of the pigment down, so I've got a lot to move around here. So I'm going to get a little bit of it on my blending stump here, and you can see that this particular brown, once you move that pigment around, the color really changes. It gets much more red and vibrant. So now that I've got that all blended, I can go back in with a dark brown again and add in where my shadows are. On this particular project, I wanted these two to look specifically like the little squirrel was giving a hug to the bear. So instead of using the dies to cut them out, I am actually going to fussy cut them, which I haven't done in a while because the dies are so very convenient to use. But I'm going to carefully cut out both of the characters, and you'll see why here in a minute. I was trying to figure out how maybe I could mask them and get the same effect that I wanted, but there really was just no way because there were parts of the squirrel that needed to be hidden behind the bear. So you can see here now I've moved on to the squirrel, and I want the squirrel to look like he's hugging the bear, giving him a hug. So you're going to see that I'm going to cut around, and I'm going to cut off that foot that's in the background there, the one that's kind of in the back. And I'm going to do the same thing with the arm. So if you think about your picture, these would be the arm and the leg that would be on the back side of the bear if the squirrel was giving him a hug. So it's just easier to cut them off than to try to squeeze the little bear into the squirrel's arms. I've got an A2 size card here, and I've cut a piece of perfectly plaid paper that I thought these colors would work to make a card for a guy, and then I used those as a base to pick out the rest of the colors for my card. I'm going to be using the A2 size stitch rectangle frame, which is the largest frame, and I've picked out a dark teal piece of cardstock that I think goes well with this pattern paper. And I'm just going to tape that down with some post-it note tape here and run that through my die cut machine to make that nice dark teal frame. I also picked out some green cardstocks, and these are going to act as my ground. And I tried to pick out colors that went well, again, with the plaid paper. That light color kind of matches the green that's in the plaid. And I'm just going to use the grassy border. This is the straight one, the first one that Lawn Fawn ever came out with, to cut the grass. This is going to be in my foreground, the lighter green. And then I'm going to use the darker green and I'm going to layer it behind it. And I'm going to use one of the stitched puffy cloud border dies, but I'm going to make it like it's trees in the background. I like to do this effect a lot. I probably do this more than I make them actually clouds. So once I know my placement so that it'll peek out from behind the grass enough, I can just run that through my die cut machine. Now I'm going to do some assembling, and I'm going to make sure I have a nice layer of adhesive on all sides of my piece of pattern paper, and I'm just going to line it up with my card base there. Make sure it is stuck down good and well. Now I can start layering the other pieces using the dark green, that's the trees of the background, and I like to hold my card up and just kind of stack the bottoms together to make sure they line up. I'm going to do the same thing with the grass. And then now I can layer the frame over top all of that. And I'm just going to use a liquid adhesive to do the frame. Just a very thin line of that. And then I can carefully line that up and frame up my little scene here. And you can see a little bit of that green's peeking out from the bottom, but I just used a straight edge and a craft knife to cut that little piece off. Now I'm going to go in with a black marker and just put some black along the cut edges of my images. This is something I used to do a lot when I would fussy cut things out. It just makes that white kind of disappear and makes the images pop more. So you can see how I want that little squirrel and that little bear to kind of fit together. And this is where I want them on my card, over to the left a little bit, so that my hugs sentiment, the little G that comes down, and the S is to the right, and there's some balance there. I want it to say sending hugs, so I'm just going to use my Herald's ABCs, which I think is a more masculine font of the ABC stamps, and I'm going to spell out the word sending. This is a lot easier than sometimes trying to find a stamp that says exactly what you want to say. Now I'm going to use all capital letters, and in this particular set there's only one of each of these. And of course the word sending has two N's. So you can see I've spelled it up to the D and the I, and now I need another N. So I'm going to pull that out, move it over, and that's left an empty space right there where that N needs to be, perfectly spaced. And what I can do is when I stamp my sentiment, I'll just go back in just with the N and fill it in. I'm using thin foam adhesive on this because I know that I need to send this card through the mail to my friend. And I'm just cutting it into pieces because I just wanted to use up that sheet. It does come in smaller squares as well. This is about half the thickness of the regular foam adhesive. Now I can stick my little critters down. And this isn't too thick to send through the mail with the thin adhesive. This is the only foam that I've put on this project, so it should be fine. And now I can adhere down the hug sentiment. And I'm going to be using this Zig adhesive pen. It's basically like a ballpoint pen, but adhesive comes out of it. A lot like a quickie glue pen. And I find that this is really great to use on these delicate sentiments. I'm also going to use my tweezers to help me put it onto my card because I don't want any of this coming off on my fingers and making my nice bold black sentiment sticky with extra adhesive. This also gets my hand out of the way so I can see exactly where I'm putting it. So I'll just stick that right down there. Make sure it's adhered down well. And then now I can stamp the sending part of my sentiment. So I'm using some versafine black ink because this is a really nice sharp black ink and I want it to look really good with that hug sentiment. So you can see the N is missing there. I'm just going to pull off the N, mount it on a small block, and go back in and line it up and just stamp that second N. And there is the finished card, and I really hope it brings a smile to my friend's face when he gets it in the mail. And here's a closer look at that card. Thanks for watching. Have an amazing day. Bye.